So it is the first deal that the UK has managed to strike, I should say, post-Brexit. How symbolic is it that they have chosen us first?
Well, I think they probably regard an agreement with Australia as easier to get than agreements with a variety of other countries because Australia is pretty much a free trading country. So our offer to the UK was, look, you can export as many goods as you like to Australia, duty free, no tariffs, no quotas, as long as you reciprocate. Whereas other countries would have carve outs of one kind or another. The other thing is, of course, we have a very similar legal system. We speak the same language. We have a great history together as countries, a lot of ethnic links, and so on. So, in principle, it was always going to be fairly easy to do, and it's been concluded.
Sounds like we got the better deal.
Well, I mean, I've often said this in trade agreements, going back to all those trade agreements we had when I was the foreign minister, that if we can import into Australia goods and services more cheaply than we were otherwise getting them, that's good for Australia. And if we can export at the same time more than we currently export, well, that's good for us as well. And this is a situation where they do get access to the Australian market. It means we can buy everything from whiskey to Land Rover vehicles and so on much more cheaply than we could before. But on the other hand, we'll get better access to their markets, in particular to their agricultural markets for our dairy farmers, our beef farmers, our mutton and lamb farmers and so on. And so it's good for everybody.
Well, some British farmers are still making some noise, suggesting that our quality just isn't as good as theirs. I mean, is ours that bad?
Well, nobody will buy it if it is, so the British farmers needn't worry. I think they're just trying to come up with arguments, to be honest with you, most of which are completely spurious, about our standards of animal welfare, our veterinary standards of one kind or another, and so on. But we already export, not very much, but we already export some beef and some sheep meat to the UK, and those exports meet British standards. So we'll continue to meet British standards just as we expect them to meet Australian standards. So look, amongst parts of the agricultural community, they're used to a protectionist regime with the European Union, and that's coming to an end. That'll be good for Britain. It'll be good for British consumers, but it will be good for Australian exporters as well, particularly Australian farmers.
And the trade deal with the UK, our trade with the UK is only a sliver of what our deal is worth when it comes to China. How much do you expect that to increase and kind of plug that gap?
Well, it's hard to know. When we concluded our free trade agreement with the United States, the Treasury and DFAT had some statistics on what that would mean, which were way too pessimistic. I think after about 10 years, we'd increased our trade with the United States by 70 or 80%. So I think it's hard to predict. It depends how business reacts to the fact that there is a free trade environment between Australia and the UK. But I would imagine we would do much better out of it, and the UK would do much better out of it than economic models at the moment suggest. I think it could be really good for us. Remember, the UK is the 5th biggest economy in the world. It's a huge economy. There are 67 million people in the UK, and it's a rich country. So it offers a fantastic market for Australia, one that we used to be our biggest market, remember, before the 1970s. But in recent years, because of the European Union, it's shrunk very substantially. But I think it'll grow again and grow very well, and they'll do very well in Australia.
Boris Johnson said overnight that he hopes that there isn't a Cold War that's taking place at the moment when it comes to China. Do you think we are in a Cold War?
Well, we're not strictly speaking in a Cold War. We're not pursuing to define a Cold War in the way that geopolitical analysts and academics would, to say that we were pursuing a policy of containment of China. We want to engage with China, but China has been incredibly aggressive towards Australia, and and towards the West over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think what's really good about the G7 meeting, and as well as the bilateral meetings that Scott Morrison's been having in the UK and France, is that we've sent, as the West broadly defined as liberal democracies, a very strong message to China, which is, look, we're happy to get on with you and happy to work with you, but don't push us too far. Don't try to change the rule of law. Don't try to change the status quo in the South China and East China Seas. Learn to work with us. Learn not to be aggressive and hostile towards us, because if you are aggressive and hostile, we'll all rally together, the Europeans, the British, the Americans, Japan, Australia, South Korea. We'll all rally together, and that will be a huge problem for China. So I hope they've learnt that lesson from what's happened over the last week.
Do you think they're getting the message?
It's hard to know. It's become so much a one-party state under Xi Jinping. I think the problem is dissenting voices probably fear, to use a phrase the Americans love, speaking truth to power. I think people would wonder what would happen to them if they told Xi Jinping the truth.
Yeah.
So, good luck to them.
Yeah.
I hope that the Chinese do understand what damage they've done over the last few years, and that we want to engage with them, but, reach out to us and try to put some of that wolf warrior rhetoric behind you.
Okay. Alexander Downer, good to chat to you. Talk to you soon.
Pleasure.